Welcome back, everyone. So yeah, I decided to go back to the Mac. And before I dig into the reasons why and how I went about it, I'll tell you about this machine here. Obviously, I didn't run out and spend $2,500 on a new M1 MacBook Pro 16-inch. No, actually I bought this one used. So, I paid just about market value, if not a little bit less. I won't say how much, but it wasn't a lot of money. And because this is a 2015 15-inch Retina i7 with 16 gigs of RAM, it is one of the last MacBook Pros to be upgradable, at least in terms of onboard storage. While the 16 gigabytes of RAM cannot be updated or upgraded, that's okay. 16 is just about where I need to be. It was a little lean in terms of onboard storage with only a 250 gig solid state. This is the 2 gigahertz i7, so this wasn't the more expensive model. Actually, the laptop that I've been using for work for the past 5-6 years is the upgraded version of this. It was ordered with a 2.2 gigahertz i7 and a 500 gigabyte solid state drive. I bought this machine for my employer, and to me it was kind of a no-brainer. We had a surplus of 15-inch MacBook Pros, and it was my job to go through each and every one, secure wipe the data, reload the OS, and prepare them for mothballing, if you will. So I went to my director. I report to a director of the department, and I said, why don't we try to recover some of the value that's left in these machines, because I had just discarded a stack of MacBook Pros that were several generations old that were still worth something when they were put away after they were replaced, and still functional machines. We just kept them as spares, but they never got used and they ended up getting tossed. She said, that's a great idea, why don't we do that, because we're trying to be more fiscally responsible, and having assets kicking around that are still worth something, that are just going to be stored indefinitely and then tossed, is kind of a waste. So I set up a plan where we could sell them to employees, of the organization at a discounted price, discounted from what you would pay on, say, eBay or Facebook Marketplace. So it was while I was preparing these machines, and I had an epiphany. Why don't I set one aside for myself and buy it? Because I was starting to get very annoyed with Windows 10. And as a lot of you folks are, Windows 10 is really turning into a hot mess. And as hard as Microsoft tries to beat Apple at their own game, they keep failing every step of the way. They keep failing. Microsoft software will be dominant in industry and in business for the most part. Obviously for legacy Active Directory support and Azure Cloud, but so let me talk about where I'm coming from and why I went back to the Mac. So those of you who've been watching my channel for many years might remember from 2008 until about 2017, I was using Macs at home. I started out with a 20-inch iMac. Back when they first came out with the aluminum-bodied iMacs, I bought one that February that year, and that became my home computer for about a year and a half. I replaced it with a 13-inch MacBook Pro. I think it was a 2010 model. which I subsequently replaced with a 2011 model. I used that 2011 MacBook Pro 13-inch up until about 2017. And it was at that point that I was starting to get a little upset with where Apple was headed with their hardware. A couple of things steered me away from Apple initially, and I'm going to be completely open as much as I can in this video, and I want to try to answer your questions before they wind up in the comments. So please refrain from commenting until you've seen the whole video, if you don't mind. So, now I've been an Apple service technician as well as a Lenovo service technician. Actually, I've been an Apple service tech since 2007. I've maintained my certifications up through current times. I've also been Lenovo certified since 2015. And so I see where each company, I see how they both engineer their products very differently. Lenovo is very cost efficient. I'll just put it that way. Lenovo builds their products to be very cost efficient, and they employ a lot of, like for example, the structure of their laptops employs a lot of plastic bonded to metal parts through the use of I don't know what the term is, but plastic welding, where they actually basically peen over a plastic tab with a hot iron, and that's what holds it together. And that has a lot of weaknesses in and of itself. But I see that a lot on Lenovo products. Whereas Apple, they start with a slab of aluminum and they machine out the entire machine cavity with a CNC router and water jets. And everything in the Mac, everything mounted into this chassis is precision fit with the tiniest of screws and the most precise accuracy you'll ever find in a consumer product, especially a computer. And Lenovo, I'm not saying Lenovo's approach is bad, but like I said, I didn't want to dive too much into the weeds on that. But again, as a service technician, that is what I see. I find that I have more issues with Lenovo products in general than Macs. In fact, in my job, which I support over 4,000 devices, I am the only service technician for 4,000 devices. Any one of them breaks, it comes to me. Most of the issues are with my Lenovo stuff. My Macs don't break. We probably have about several hundred Macs at any given time. Our staff members use the Macs, actually. The only reason the Macs ever usually fail, at least in my organization, and this is what I'm actually seeing. I am not an Apple fanboy. I'm not a Lenovo fanboy. I'm not a fanboy of any particular manufacturer. I have my preferences, but what I'm seeing in the field, in my bubble of 4,000 devices, is Apple products failing due to neglect and abuse, liquid damage, for example, and Lenovo products failing because they just didn't want to live anymore. One shining example. We just bought a fleet of Lenovo, I think they were ThinkPad L series notebooks for our administrative staff. By the way, that is where these MacBook Pros came from. We switched them to Windows for various reasons. The Lenovos, I've had a couple of them suffer random driver glitches. I had one just the other day that every time the user turned it on, it would emit an audible test tone, and it was a melody, not like a. So Lenovo replaced the traditional PC beep code with a musical riff, and you have to use an app on your phone to decode what that means. So her laptop kept playing this riff, and it was ear-piercingly loud. It overrides any volume controls that may be set. So I used my phone, I decoded it, and it turned out to be a display issue. I opened the laptop and I found that the display cable had worked its way loose. Now, you'll never find that on an Apple product because the cable is screwed down with a tie bar. What you'll see on an Apple product is the cable may literally fail, it may break, but it will never come undone from the logic board like it did on that Lenovo. I reseated the cable, cleared the BIOS settings, and it just came back to life. No code since. So where was I going with this? As a Lenovo tech, I decided that I need to continue supporting what I service and buying what I am qualified to repair. So I bought myself a Lenovo T480. It was a custom order. I ordered it with an i7-8440U, I think. It had a 16 gigabytes of RAM, and I ordered it initially with a 512 gigabyte spinning drive, which I subsequently replaced with a 1 terabyte solid state. And what I did is I actually bought the Lenovo FRU part. It's a solid state or M.2 adapter that goes into the 2.5 inch drive bay and uses a special cable to give you the full bus width of data throughput. So it's not using the SATA bus, as far as I understand it. And that machine was a real powerhouse, but I constantly had problems with it, mostly due to Windows 10 bullshit. Is this thing going? Yeah. I had a lot of driver issues in my 2.5 years of ownership. I bought it in September of 2018, and I did buy the extended warranty, and I extended it even further once it was about to run out. More on that later. But this machine, the build quality was not what I was used to with my Apple products. The case was very flimsy. I liked it initially. It had a nice keyboard. I don't want to trash this machine. But the trackpad, I was spoiled. 7-8 years of an Apple trackpad has spoiled me because I love Apple. Apple makes I'm sorry. I don't care who you are. The Apple trackpad is the best trackpad in the industry, period. There is no better. Prove me wrong. If you have a laptop that has a better trackpad than a glass Apple Magic Touch trackpad, or haptic feedback trackpad in this case, please tell me what it is, because I'm curious. And I'll go into more about why these are so precise and why they're so nice to use when we start talking about the Apple products. But the Lenovos, especially my T480, I was never really ecstatic with the build quality. I had the bottom cover off more than 3 times. Once to clean it, another time to upgrade the solid state disk, and I took it off one other time for some reason, I forget why. And each time, a clip would snap off. I service these for a living. That is what I am paid to do, and I've been doing it for a long time. I'm really good with tools. It's just, you try to very gingerly unsnap the case around the perimeter, and one snaps off. I think I lost 2 in all, honestly. Which isn't the end of the world, but it's just not a harbinger of quality, I had some issues with that laptop over the years. One of them, the display driver got crazy on it at one point. It just started displaying weird fractal patterns and nonsense. I realized very quickly that, it could have been a hardware issue. Fortunately, the machine was under warranty. The first thing I tried was I reinstalled the display driver, and sure enough, it fixed it. Okay. Another time, the trackpad just went crazy on it. So I upgraded the trackpad driver, and it fixed it. But these are problems that should not be issues in 2021. We've been building laptops for a long time as a race, and I just don't feel that we should still be dealing with driver bullshit in 2021. I'm very disappointed in where Windows has gone and where it could be. it seems like Microsoft is trying to, once again, they're trying to beat Apple at their own game. And I can't quite express in words what I hate about Windows 10. I just can't do it because I'm more visually oriented, and I sense things that are just not right, and I can't. It has to do with the interface and how the interface works. It's just a piss poor design. Another example is the hidden control panel in Windows 10. To get to the main control panel, you have to jump through hoops. It keeps changing every time they release a new version. It seems like it's the ability to get into this. The original OG Windows control panel is changed. The access method has changed at least twice. At one point, you could right-click on the Start menu, and boom, there it is. Then they took that away. Now I have to search for it in the Windows search bar. And then I put a first thing I always do is I put a bookmark to it, or a shortcut to it on the desktop. But I shouldn't have to do that. It should not be. And like I said, you know, the Microsoft Store, it just seems kludgy to me. I can't quite. I think it was like I was trying to find a copy of Microsoft's. Oh, I know what it was. I've been resisting creating an account in the Microsoft App Store because I don't feel I need to. I just should not have to do that. I needed a copy of Remote Desktop. Initially, I could download it without an account. I tried to get it later on without an account, and I couldn't. Forcing me to sign in. I couldn't get it. I could not download it. Now I've got to make a Microsoft account now. One more password to keep track of. Yay, thanks Microsoft. The thing is, I went back to Windows to get away from that App Store experience. I just don't like it. It's the walled garden approach. I don't think I'm alone in this. You know, Microsoft has the Windows Defender built in, which is an antivirus software. I personally use Sophos. I like Sophos. It works well for me. But they have the Windows Defender built in. And as of today, I just found out that Windows Defender has a built-in tool for defeating or preventing ransomware from deploying on your machine and gaining a foothold on your documents. Why the hell isn't Microsoft turning this on by default? Ask me that. Riddle me that. If it's there, and it could prevent billions of dollars in fraudulent charges and data loss and just plain privacy issues, why wouldn't they turn that on by default? Or educate the consumer with a pop-up window saying, hey, by the way, if you click here, you know what I'm saying? It's kludgy. There's no better way for it to describe Windows 10. And again, getting back to the driver issues with my ThinkPad, there was a faulty Intel Thunderbolt driver released that, when installed, it would hammer the controller until it failed. I believe it would constantly query it until the damn thing burned out. My machine, my T480, was one of the affected machines, but it was not damaged. I checked it over very thoroughly, and like I said, I extended the warranty. Once I found out about that bug, I upgraded the driver to the correct one, and I then proceeded to extend the warranty while I still could. So getting back to this machine and me acquiring it, it was at that point that I had realized I was looking at pricing on used laptops, especially Lenovo T480s, to see what the machine might actually be worth. And when I was seeing numbers in the $600 to $700 range, I said, now's the time to strike while the iron's hot. If I'm going to continue using Windows 10 as my home computer, I need to make a decision now. And I decided, no, we're selling this machine while we can. I sold that machine on eBay. It was bidded up to $870. Over $900 was shipping. And then I found out the buyer had to pay a $70 sales tax on top of that. So somebody out in Illinois bought my used ThinkPad for about $1,000. It's just insane. Absolutely insane. But that's what it sold for. A used 2.5-year-old ThinkPad T480. Now, don't get me wrong, the machine was flawless when I sold it. It was working as well as any T480 could ever work. It had the upgraded 1 terabyte solid state, even included a brand new, never used Lenovo Navas carrying case, which was a beautiful case. I wish I kept it, honestly. I even threw in, now this is another Windows 10 itis problem. I had actually purchased the Lenovo Bluetooth mouse, which I loved that mouse. It was the most comfortable mouse ever. Unfortunately, being Windows 10, it never really worked well. It just kept cutting out randomly. I'd be using it for a day and then stopped working. I tried a different Bluetooth mouse, same problem. I tried that Bluetooth mouse on another Windows 10 machine. Guess what? Same problem. I tried that Bluetooth mouse on a Mac. Worked perfectly. No problems, no issues, no glitches. No. And in my research and in my experience, I found that Windows 10, Windows in general, just doesn't like Bluetooth keyboards and mice, or just plain mice. It just doesn't like it. Why? It's a rhetorical question. I'm not really looking for an answer, but anyway, after 2 years of trying to troubleshoot it into working correctly, I just gave up. I said to hell with it. I bought this Logitech mouse. This is a USB mouse and it works fan-freaking-tastic. In fact, I like this Logitech mouse so much I continue to use it on this here Mac, because I'm not paying $100 for an Apple mouse. Just not doing that. I may try to find a used one, or if I can find a new old stock soap bar style Bluetooth mouse for the Mac, I'll probably buy it, because I had one back when I had the iMac. It was a great mouse, very comfortable, very easy on the hands. Had a nice weight to it. I liked it. So, just to give you an idea as to why I went back to Apple, that's why. I know I've spent a long time bashing Apple, and that's because they do things that piss me off. And there are many of the same reasons why a lot of you may hate Apple. For example, like I said, I am an Apple tech and have been for a very long time. They have designed their machines to be practically unserviceable, in fact totally unserviceable, unless you have access to a couple of key things: service manuals and documentation, tools, and software. All of these things they keep under lock and key and can only be accessed by being an Apple authorized service provider. And to the average person, you may not have, or you will not have, access to these things. If I, as an Apple authorized service provider, were to, say, sell these things to the general public after buying them from Apple, or give access to anyone other than an authorized service provider, access to the materials that I have and all the information I have on how to service this machine, I would be in a world of shit. Now, I wouldn't do that because I have integrity. I have a job to do, and if I jeopardize that job by giving away the secrets to Apple's stupidness, I would be in a lot of trouble, and my employer would be in a lot of trouble. So I won't be doing that. But the thing is, and the way they're doing it is so passive-aggressive. Just watch Louis Rossman's channel and how he has been, and he is doing a huge service to the repair community with all of his efforts in promoting the right to repair. Let me give you some shining examples. Now, remember we're talking about these trackpads. These Apple, the Magic Trackpad, or whatever the hell their branding is now for these. They are the best trackpad, period. But what you may not understand Now this is what they call a haptic or force feedback trackpad. It uses a tiny voice coil built in right underneath the glass that uses pressure sensing technology. Now if it senses additional pressure above that of a standard click, it initiates that haptic feedback. Now what that can do is enable additional functionality, of which I don't really... I'm going to be honest with you, every Apple laptop that I've ever used that has this feature, I've turned it off because I find it annoying. So I don't use that feature, but it's there, and this is the first model of MacBook Pro to have it. But how it works is it uses, again, force feedback or force sensing technology in the trackpad itself. If it senses additional pressure, so if I shut this machine down completely, the trackpad, if I'm not mistaken on this model, it doesn't click at all. Let me just confirm that real quick. So I shouldn't feel any clicking because it's all, how you would say, it's all synthetic. Yeah, so there's no clicking at all. It doesn't click, no click, nothing, just nothing. Because the clicking sensation, again, is done through a tiny voice coil that vibrates ever so slightly when it senses finger pressure. So, as far as I know, it uses 2 different weight classifications to determine a light touch versus a heavy touch. And when you replace a trackpad on a Mac, or if you do any work to the top case, you have to use Apple's... this is perfect. I want to show you this. The external display came on. You probably saw that. See how it's pink now? This is a common problem on this model, and it's not necessarily indicative of a hardware problem, because I have one of these on my desk at work that's done this since the day I pulled it out of the box. Let me put in my password. Hold on. Now, I find that this happens more often with certain monitors and cable combinations, but it is an easy fix. You just unplug it. See, it's not a loose connection. I've checked for that. Just unplug it, plug it back in again, and it'll come back to life. That's what happens to these, but we'll get into that next. Wow, check out this high-res camera. This is terrible. This is what the FaceTime HD camera looks like. Anyway, I wanted to point out that, wow, I feel like I'm being interrogated. Real quick, I changed the cable a couple days ago when I started filming this. I started filming this a few days ago, and I've since changed the HDMI cable, and it hasn't malfunctioned since. So it looks like my cable just wasn't happy, and that was that. The monitor works fine, so I just thought I'd do a quick little update while I'm editing this video. So I just happened to notice it popped up like that. Quick fix is if I just switch it to a VGA connection, I'll never have the problem again. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to try a different cable and see if that helps. Back to the story. So the trackpad, anytime you service this machine, you have to use Apple's trackpad calibration template and weight kit. And it just drops on top of the trackpad, and it tells you where to place the weights when you're running the calibration software, which is only accessible, by the way, through Apple's own service portal. Okay, I've had to do this on numerous occasions. Anytime you remove the bottom cover, as a matter of fact, I believe, if I'm not mistaken on this one, you have to run that calibration on this trackpad. It's easy to do, and what it does is it sets the sets and calibrates, of course, the different weight classifications that are needed to control the feedback feature of this trackpad. So, not only that, on the older MacBook Airs, the previous gen MacBook Airs, the keyboard information is all stored, like the keyboard map, if you will, is stored on a chip in the trackpad itself. So if you replace the trackpad with a brand new one from Apple, the keyboard will not function correctly. You have to program it. You have to tell the trackpad what kind of keyboard it's hooked up to. That's the keyboard mapper utility that you can only use on Apple's Service Portal. Stuff like that is passive aggressive, but what's downright evil is the T2 equipped machines, which don't allow you to change really any major components like the display or the keyboard or well, there's a chart that Apple provides that tells you what exactly requires T2 configuration. But you can only get that from Apple. And no, you cannot walk into the Apple store and say, I replaced my computer screen, can you please run this through your Apple configuration tool? And they will tell you where to go, and it won't be out in the lobby to wait while they fix it. No, they're going to tell you to leave and come back when you have real money. So, yeah, that's kind of where we're at with these products. They do it in the name of security, but honestly, we all know why they're doing this. We know. But the end result is a product that generally works really well, aside from this problem. So, like I said, the 15-inch Retina MacBook Pro is a flawed machine in many ways. Not only does it have the typical Apple USB problems, which I have experienced on my machine at work on numerous occasions, it just gets stupid once in a while. The problems are quite extensive, if you really think about it, because one of those problems happens to be the display cables on these machines. They tend to go out prematurely. Display cables on laptops have been wearing out since the dawn of time, but when it happens early in the system's life, it's kind of a problem. Now, I believe the 2013 and 14s were more effective than the 2015s. But here's what happens. The display cable is, I believe it's on this side, and it's raveled around the hinge kind of tightly, and then it's routed around and over. And well, the cable is too short. The flex circuit section of it is too short. So it tends to chafe and break. Now, you can't just replace a display cable on this. You actually have to heat gun the display apart, pull the cable out, and you can get an aftermarket cable that you can actually replace it, but it's not what you would call an authorized repair. The authorized repair that Apple will allow me to do as a technician is to ship out this display, pay a couple $100, $300, $400, and I will receive a refurbished display in return with a new cable. That's a lot of money for something that should never be breaking that early in the first place. But as a technician who services I think we had about maybe 15 to 20 of these machines of this exact, between 2013 to 2015 models. We've got about 15 of them, maybe 20. I have had 0 display cable failures. Not one. Not one has ever failed where I work. It could be how they're using them. It could be luck. Who knows? What I will tell you is this. I bought this machine for below market value, knowing full well what its flaws are. There's one more flaw, and it affected a fairly select number of devices. This model was was affected by a battery recall sometime in around 2020 or so. 2019 I think is when it started. And it just so happens that I was going through my notes after I had bought this machine. I had to go back into the system and make sure that my name was on it as having been purchased. I had actually purchased it. And I noticed there was a line that I put in there saying that the battery was replaced in January of 2020. this was one of the 2 machines that we had where I work that were affected by the battery recall, which could cause the battery to spontaneously combust or some shit like that. There were only 2 out of the 20 or so machines, and this was one of them. So the battery in this device is only, well, just over 1.5 years old. And I looked at the cycle count, and it was quite low. If I go into power, the cycle count is only 94 cycles, which actually seems a little higher than I thought it would be. The one that I use for work, the one that's on my desk, and has been since 2016, has been cycled 20 times. It has only been charged 20 times. Now, by comparison, this one's a dinosaur. Now, these batteries are good for about 5 or 6 years under normal use, which is pretty damn good. Which brings me to my next point. What Apple does very well. Now, we'll start off with the keyboard. This generation MacBook Pro had an amazing keyboard. I know, I use one every day. And when they went to the butterfly keyboard design, that's kind of when I realized that another Apple was not to be had in my future. I'm going to be honest with you. That was one of the reasons that I dumped Mac for Windows again. The other thing that they do well is laptop speakers. The speakers on this laptop are incredible sounding, much better than the 13-inch. In fact, the new MacBook Pros sound even better. By comparison, the speakers in my Lenovo T480 sounded quite tinny and bad. Just not very good. These sound incredible. Another thing that they do very well is, of course, the trackpad, but we kind of harped on that. But batteries. Now, the unibody MacBook Pros have some of the best batteries that I've ever seen in the industry. I've been servicing, again, Lenovo's, IBM's, back before Lenovo took them over, Compaq's, HP's, Dell's, you name it. And the laptops that seem to have the best batteries overall in terms of initial charge time and longevity are these unibody MacBook Pros with the lithium polymer batteries. The older MacBook Pros have some of the worst batteries that I've ever seen. That being the when they first went to lithium polymer, I think it was the first gen MacBook Pro. I think those were lithium polymers. Those were terrible, absolutely awful. They would tend to blow up. I've had a lot of them just burst. But these are good batteries. They last a very long time. My 13-inch MacBook Pro, which I used off the battery all the time, I think by the time I decided to replace the battery, it still was technically healthy and good. It would last about maybe 3 hours, which is pretty damn good for a laptop like that. For what I was using it for, a lot of video editing. This one here, I don't even know. I've never tested it, but I imagine I would get. Let's see if it'll tell me. I'm going to pull the cable off. See if it tells me what the battery life should be. It just gives me percentage. They took away the ability to tell you what the time was. Yeah, I don't think I can. I'm going to change that to 15 minutes. But yeah, it's just crazy that the batteries in these last so. Yeah, they don't tell you the time anymore. They don't give you that option. But no. Anyway, I took that away. I forget what OS version that was when they took that out. So a couple of things I want to mention. So what I don't like about this generation MacBook Pro is when they took out the battery level indicator. There was a little button on the older models you press, and it would show a row of LEDs, and that would give you the battery level when the machine was off and closed. I liked that feature. It was very handy. I used it all the time, but they took it away. I don't really bemoan the loss of the DVD drive because I don't really use them much. I have an external DVD drive that I use simply for ripping movies and really not much else. Oh, ripping CDs, putting them into iTunes. But you know, I could spend hours and hours complaining about why I hate the tech industry and where it's headed, and it's just not a good time. But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to try to stay positive. And this gets me back into the ecospace that is Apple at a very reasonable price. And I'm going to keep my eyes open on what is coming in the future. The M1 MacBook Airs I've been deploying left and right have been phenomenal machines. I've only had one break, and it was because somebody dropped it and didn't tell me what happened. I'm going to go on a rant here. Again, I do IT support for a large organization. I'm involved. Everybody there knows me. Like literally, nearly every employee knows who I am. And so I know, you know, it's kind of one of those. It's like a big, giant, enormous family. And the thing that bothers me the most is that laptops get broken a lot. Not as often as you might think, but they get broken. Shit happens. But the excuses that people make up and the outright, oh, I don't know what you're talking about, that stuff needs to stop. They're always lying to me about why the laptop is broken. And I always tell them how it broke. I said, it's like, all right, let me tell you how it broke. You dropped it, right? You left it in your car overnight. You left a pencil. And they'll turn red and they'll say, yeah, how did you know? And I'll say, well, I've been doing this a long time. Or, I know what you drank for coffee this morning. You happen to like hazelnut, don't you? Yes, I do. Well, how did you know that? Like, well, your laptop is full of hazelnut coffee, dummy. You know, that's the kind of thing that gets me, is that people lie, and it's not just children, it's adults. These are grown adults with college degrees and careers and Beamers, and they're just lying to me about why they're. It's like, is it really worth lying to me? If you tell me what really happened, that'll make my life a little easier because I don't have to go investigate. It's like, do they lie to their doctors? You know? No, I don't have a raging headache and haven't had one. It's like, I haven't had a raging headache for 6 weeks. What are you talking about? I'm fine, right? Yeah, you're probably fine. Turns out they have some major problem that they just didn't tell the doctor about because they think if they ignore the problem, it's okay. They lie about it, it's okay. It didn't happen. What are you talking about? You know? But people lie. And anyway, so I had an M1 MacBook Air just a couple days ago. Shattered screen. Of course they don't know how it happened. Why would they, right? Ah, man, you just hand somebody a $1,000 device and hope they don't break it. But for God's sakes, tell me the truth. But anyway. So I'm back in Mac. Now, one of the biggest driving forces between getting me into a Mac again is indeed iMovie. And I don't mind the new iMovie. I don't love it, but I don't mind it. It does the job. Really, all I'm looking for is a piece of software that lets me offload my camera, stitch the clips together, cut out a few pieces, and bada boom, bada bing. iMovie does that better than any of the other programs I've tried. I've tried Sony Vegas, I've tried Pinnacle, I've tried, and I used Adobe Premiere Elements. Out of all four of those, iMovie does it better than all of them. It does a much better job. You don't need to know how to edit video to use iMovie. And that's what I love about iMovie. I have no intentions of upgrading to, what's it called? Final Cut Pro. I have no need to do that. iMovie does everything I needed to do and then some. And I'm happy with iMovie. The thing is, as you probably understand, I do IT support all day long. 8 hours a day, sometimes more. And I'm going around, I'm putting out fires, I'm troubleshooting systems, I'm consoling people, I'm teaching people how to use technology, apparently I'm now distributing or selling technology as well as buying it. That's what I do all day long. I don't want to come home and have to do it on my equipment. which is why I'm really, really not missing that laptop right now, because I spent so much time doing updates for Windows 10 and driver patches and this and troubleshoot that, and why doesn't this work all of a sudden because this update came in and broke that, and that's really all I was doing with that Windows 10 machine. It just drove me crazy. Absolutely batshit crazy. I'm tired of it. So, Mac. Are they perfect? No. Is the company evil? Yes. And so aren't the others. Look, don't kid yourself. Lenovo, Dell, HP, Acer, they don't want you to fix your own stuff. Are you kidding? Some of them make it easier, but only because they haven't put forth the effort into, making it hard. It takes effort. It takes engineering to make self-repair difficult. And Apple apparently has an entire department dedicated to just that one thing. Man. If I could solve the world's problems. But no, seriously, it's just... they're all evil. Microsoft is evil. They've always been, before Apple was evil, did you know Microsoft was the most evil company on planet Earth? Before it was Google, before it was Apple, it was Microsoft. And they haven't really changed. They've gotten worse. Yeah. I'm still reeling from Bill Gates' sudden descent from heaven. I actually had him on a high pedestal when I was a kid. I idolized the guy. He didn't invent Microsoft DOS. He bought it from another company, but he made bazillions of dollars doing it. That's intelligent. That's smart. That's what a smart person would do. Knowing what to buy and when to buy it and how to negotiate. I mean, that's what makes people successful, really. Look at Steve Wozniak. I mean, I guess he's successful in his own way, but he never wanted to be the center of attention. But Steve Wozniak did all the hard work. He did all the engineering, and he's the man to credit for the Apple II. And really, Steve Jobs gets a lot of the credit for their products and success. But really, Steve Wozniak was the man who made it happen. Without Steve Wozniak, there would be no Apple. But he didn't want that rock star lifestyle like Steve Jobs had. Not that Bill Gates had a hard rock lifestyle, but you know what I'm saying. He was a good man. Still is. He's still alive. But anyway. And now you know why I did what I did. The Lenovo, I will say this, the Lenovo T480 did sell, again, 900 and I think I said this earlier if I recall. It's the third time recording this. It sold for $870, less expenses, and the buyer emailed me this morning saying he got the device and it's exactly as I described, and he's happier than a pig in chocolate. He's happier than a pig in chocolate. I guess that would be a happy pig, wouldn't it? So I'm happy for him, and I hope it works out. It turns out my laptop received a lot of attention because it is a mint condition T480, one owner, still under warranty. So that made it pretty successful. I mean, I got a lot of inquiries, a lot of questions, many thousands of viewers, I think, on that auction. So I did pretty well with that one. I guess I didn't take I took a bath on the resale, but I did get 2.5 years of use out of it, and for that I can say I'm very grateful. So for 2.5 years, that laptop cost me $1,000 to use. Hopefully, my return on investment is going to be a little better with this one. So, that having been said, I wish you all a great night. And whether you use a Mac, a PC, a Linux machine, whatever you use, as long as you're happy with it. I'll close this out with one more thing, because it's going to come up in the comments. Hackintoshes. Enough with the Hackintoshes. I have no need for a Hackintosh. For $400, I got this machine. Oh wait, that's what I paid for it. Sorry, now you know. For $400, I got this entire machine as you see it. Now, how would I do better with a Hackintosh? I'd be spending a lot more on hardware and spending a lot more time making it all work together. No thank you, I'm good. I'm all set. I don't need to come home and worry that my Hackintosh is now bricked because of a software update that I forgot to somehow block in the kernel or in the terminal or whatever you have to do to prevent that happening. Running a bootlegged copy of macOS. No thank you, not my thing. As for Linux, I'm just not a Linux guy. I've dabbled with Linux, different versions, Mandriva, Red Hat, Ubuntu. Well, Red Hat was many years ago. But I just wasn't really enthralled. I mean, I may set up a Linux machine somewhere for some reason, but I just don't have any reason to do that right now. It's just not my... most of the software that I like to use is... Well, I can't run iMovie in Linux, can I? I guess I can't. So I guess there goes that. Anyway. One more thing. Okay, so I meant to say this earlier in the video, but I missed it. But let me show you what I mean. So, backlit keyboards. Now, Lenovo's got them. I think HP's got them. I think they all have them now. Lenovo's solution for the backlit keyboard dilemma is to control it with a function key and a spacebar. Now, it comes on in 2 stages. I think it was 3. Low, medium, bright, off. Or was it low and bright and off? I forget. But it's not automatic. Now, Apple, in their infinite geniusness, uses the camera as a light sensor to determine how bright it should be. I'm actually just covering the camera. Now, earlier models had an ambient light sensor mounted in the keyboard, but they realized very quickly that they can just use the camera as a freaking light sensor. How cool is that? So if I cover the camera completely, it dims down because dark room, you don't want it blinding you. If I remove my finger from the camera, it brightens up because it's getting more ambient light and therefore lights up brighter. And I can control the keyboard with these dedicated keyboard brightness selectors. Huh? How cool is that? And it's totally, completely, 100% automatic. I rather like that design. With Lenovo's, it was kludgy. It was on or off. And it wasn't automatic. Now, in their defense, IBM's keyboard light system was one of the first in the industry. IBM was, I think they were the first laptop to have an illuminated keyboard, but it wasn't backlit, it was forward lit or front lit, down lit. They actually had a tiny LED mounted just above the LCD display, and earlier models it lit up in orange, and it provided an ambient glow for the keyboard, which was very handy. Controlled with the function key and one of the function keys. Actually, I think it might have been function space, come to think of it. And anyway, that light was that was enormous. That was the first laptop to have that feature, to my knowledge, anyway. But when Apple came out with this backlit keyboard in like 2006, it was revolutionary. Because for the first time ever, your keyboard on your computer would light up like the keyboard on your phone. That was ingenious. It was one of the smartest things they ever did. And for several years, it was an option. You could buy the machine with or without the backlit keyboard. And I don't know why you wouldn't buy a backlit. It's the coolest thing ever. I use it all the time. So, at this point, it's pretty much standard, I think, across the board, except for maybe, some of the MacBook Airs didn't have that option, and the earlier MacBooks didn't have that either. The white plastic polycarbonate MacBooks did not have backlit keyboards, but the MacBook Pros did. On that note, I think it's time we say goodnight. And I thank you for your time, for understanding why I made the switch and why I don't use Linux and why I don't use Hackintoshes, because I have plenty of Macs at my disposal. If I did not have access to a Mac, I would probably consider a Macintosh or Hackintosh. Maybe, maybe not. I've never even had a desire to build one. That's the weirdest thing. Usually I like to do weird shit. But I know one guy who did build a Hackintosh, and he said it was more frustrating than it was ever worth. And he's a smart guy. I trust his opinions. But, just not my bag, man. Well, anyway. On that note, good night.